But we stopped, as I believe. Oh, and can everyone get on Slack? So what I've done here is, and I'll go through it real quick, but here's where we left off. This is so funny. I just closed up the case, put it off to the side. So it's still here. What we did is we basically made here a private key in WIF format. We then made an address using Brain Wallet, and then we funded it using a faucet. So what I've done here, if we go to Slack, I put down the file, so in case we didn't have that, we could just download the file, and we're going to step through them. And we're going to go from, again, just moving an unspent transaction output from one place to another. We're just going to move that around. And then we're going to build up to actually putting op returns in. And we're going to see these op returns putting data into the blockchain. So we're going to actually just write to the blockchain today. But we're going to go step by step. And furthermore, I figured we might not have our coins. We might have lost them. So I created here 5 different files, and I was going to go through it. Yeah. What I was going to see is, if you see on Slack, you're going to see these .js files, of course. Oops. Oh, this is good. Okay. And what I've done is I've loaded up, I think it's the first 5. So maybe we could do 20, then 21, then 22, 23, 24, 25. And then this way, let's just open one of these up. It's just oops, here we go. And what we've got here is we've got a set of 10 addresses. And each one of these has exactly the same number of Satoshis, so 100,000. So this way, in your group of, let's say, number 20, just maybe somebody starts at the top, somebody starts in the middle, somebody starts at the end, so that, we just move them around. And if we run out, we can make more. Or if you've got some, when I was doing this for the first time, what I had is lists like this, whereby I would just be shipping Satoshi's funds back and forth between 2 sets. So this is a great, development tool. Actually, one thing that is somewhat new, we'll see, in the old days, 3 months ago, you didn't have to put a miner's fee, but now you do. If you don't put a miner's fee, they're not going to, it'll take forever and a day. So we're going to build that in so that we don't have to worry about it. Into testnet. That I think is a terrible outcome, but I guess everybody wants to make it a very real platform. It'll still go through, of course, but it might take hours. So we'll build in the fee. So can everyone get a copy of this while we give a minute to pick up these files, just to put a local copy onto your device? So let's say again, so 20, 21, 22, 23, yeah, also a test. All right, so has everyone got their file at least open with the testnet coins? You might have your own testnet coins, that's fine. So what we're going to do here, and also, again, you might have lost how to make a testnet private key and address. So I put that here too, so we can look at that. So, all right, so what I thought we'd do is let's just break down the code real quick. Yes. So this is where we left off last time, where we made one of these. Where we basically have bit core. We're going to require it to be installed on our machine, which again, if we haven't got that, we can load that up. We're going to create our private key using bitcore, the function private key. We're passing the parameter, please use a testnet. We're then going to take this private key, and we have to then convert it into a wallet import format. So we're going to create a new variable called exported, take the function private key, the variable private key, pass it to this attribute to WIF, passing it this parameter, again, to the testnet, so that we're all in just a testnet scenario. This is something different. We were using brainwallet.github.org to do this work, to create the address. However, we could just have bitcore do it too. So we can then take that private key that we just created, and we then are going to create an address, again on the testnet. And now we output to the console what our private key is, and then what the corresponding address is. So if you have a private key, there's a list of functions you can perform on that to create a Bitcoin address. Now if you have a Bitcoin address, what are the functions necessary to create a private key? Hopefully none, because otherwise the whole thing falls apart. Just a one way. Otherwise we're up a creek. So let's go to terminal. So again, if you're on a Mac, just command space and then hit terminal. So we've got terminal. Let me just clear this out. Oh, I should change that too. So we're going to list everything to see what we got. So ls-l just lists it in a nice formatted way. So let's hit node, and I called it 1. I like to go with these dumb namings 1, 2, 3 so I can find it quicker. It's just so. First off, can anyone need to know how to get to, let's say, a folder containing the file? I should have gone that first. So if we hit.
How do you create the file? Like, how would you?
Oh yes, so there are a couple ways to create the file. So if you have the file already, we can copy that onto our local machine. So let's create a folder. So we would go into our home directory. Let's just do this one. There we go. So we go into our home CD tilde, which is over by the 1 character. So that makes sure that we're in our home folder. We can hit print working directory, PWD. And we're in fact in our user Jeff Flowers folder, which is what we want. We can then create a folder called make directory, so MK directory. And here we can call it, Java stuff, whatever we want. So we now have that folder made. So we now need, again, we are in this folder, Jeff Flowers, but we created in this line make directory JavaScript. So we're going to create, or rather, we're going to change directory CD into Java stuff. So now, if we look at print working directory, we are now inside this folder, and there is absolutely nothing in here, right? It's empty. So here's where we now want to put that file we just downloaded in, for example. So we could go in here, or we could create our own file using something like nano, and just go, test.js, and we could just, write down, we could write our program however we like, or we could copy and paste that in. All of this could also be accomplished inside the Mac or your operating system GUI. We could have gone to our home directory here again, in this case, Jeff Flowers, and we could just create here, make new folder, and instead of making JavaScript in the command line, we could just do it here as well. So I could just say, Java, I don't know why I can't spell Java stuff too. And we could then drag that file in. Either way. All right. But once we have that file, and let's just get out of here. Let's just go back here. Once we have it, and we're in that folder with that file. Let's do let's just double check we've got node installed. We'll do node -- version. And if we don't have it, this is a great opportunity to install it. So is that working? Yes, here we go. So here we go. It looks like I have version 0.10.35, which is fine. I think they're on 0.12, but this will work. If you don't have it installed, we would have to, of course, change to super user. Actually, if you don't have Node installed, you got to download it and then install it off the package. Okay. So everyone should have Node installed. We probably have global install so that you should have access to it throughout the entire development environment. So all right, so we're going to hit node. We're going to run this program that I called, again, 1-testnet address.js for JavaScript. Now that's a lot to type, right? So we're just going to type the first few characters, in this case 1 dash, and I'm going to hit tab, and it just fills it out for me, so I don't have to type all that nonsense. I hit run, thank goodness, and it works. Here is what we thought it would output. Let's take a look at it and make sure we understand what's going on here. So this is right here what we're running in our computer, if you will. This is the computer. This is our program. And over here we are outputting to the console the following. Our with private key is this variable exported, which is in fact this variable in a with format, which we create over here. So this is the only thing that we're being shown to the computer. So well, let's double check. Well, there you go. We've got these two lines being shown to us. If we were to rerun this, would we get the exact same output here?
No.
Well, no, because it should be a different set. So let's run it again. So the easiest way to run it, once we've got something in our command line, just hit the up arrow, just to repeat the last. We can go as far back as we want, up and down. And sure enough, we've got another different pair. So, okay. And you know, while we're here, let's grab one. So this is a Bitcoin address, and how many Bitcoins are on this? Hopefully none. So we could double check that by going to a chain.so, a blockchain explorer. It is slow. We'll just put it here. And it's empty. We're going to use this one. This is where we're going to move all the stuff. How about we do that? All right. All right, so here we go. And so everyone's got a set of keys already generated. All right, let's go through. And what I'm going to do now is let's see how we do this for real, and I'm going to put this one up on in a second. So you might see that these text files have 10 in them. So if we're doing something 10 times, we might as well just put a loop in here. So what we've got here, this record's kind of ugly. There we go, it's better that way. We're just going to do a loop here, a simple loop, going from 0 to 10, and just incrementing them one at a time, where we have the private key be generated each time. We're then going to take that private key, make it into a with format, and then make an address from that. And then we're going to output the number that we're on, 0 through 9 in this case, what the private key is. So this is the text the user would see, and then this would be the variable the user would see. And this is just an easy way just to make 10 of these real quick. Yes?
Why is the, go back to code, exported, right? I don't see it used again.
Oh, it's just, so this variable is created within the loop, so it's being created on the fly. If we create these oh, that's a good question. So the question is, hey, you see it right here inside the loop. Why not have it declared and initialized above or beyond the loop or in the front?
Right.
If we did that, though, it would be, if we declared it, initialized it, it would be given a value. We would enter into the loop with that value. We would pull it globally instead of a local variable. And then it would run through I equals 0 and go to I equal 1, and it would go, oh, global variable export, grab that exact same variable and output. And we would get essentially 10 of the exact same private keys and addresses. So by declaring it locally within the loop, it gets regenerated each time, a fresh, clean one. So, but again, the only reason I put this here is because you as a human being like what the with looks like. It's less likely you'll make a typo. Not that you're actually typing these in. We'll see that we don't type anything in. You could though. And then of course here's the address. So all we have added to this earlier program is just a loop. We're making 10 of these on the fly, so we're not just waiting around forever. We're waiting around for other things, but not for this. So we could now, let me just upload this to Slack. I don't know, we'll see. And this one, we're done with that one, so all right, so I'll put this one here. So I'll put this modified testnet address. Okay. So if we were to now, again, if we were to hit node, and we call that 2, if we were to run that, we would see that it will create, again, 10 of these that we could then use. So now we've got 10 to play with, and we can then modify. Now this is actually quite cumbersome, so one way to make it a little bit easier is we could, again, run it, and then we could basically output all that into a file. So we're going to put it into a clean, how do I call it? I don't know, clean file, .txt. And there you go. You don't see anything, right? But if we were to hit this, we see a clean file.txt. And if I were to go to this file here, there it is. Oops. And now I have it as a file I can play with it a little bit easier. Okay. So let's now run it. Let's now do a transaction. So we're going to move value from one location to the other location. So what we're going to need is we're going to need to use chain. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my set so I don't overlap on anybody's. And I'm just going to, I'm going to move this one, so this is going to be empty after I'm done with it. And I am going to put this one, and I'm going to put this one up here too. This one is, for some reason, the more advanced one. I have the other one. Let's just build a transaction now. So transaction, action, build. All right. All right, here we go. This looks terrible, but let's just look at it. So let's go through this one. We're going to now take one of those private keys. We're then going to move it into a new empty address. So we're going to need a funded address and an unfunded address, essentially. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our private key, which is in WIF format. But again, as we talked about, Deepak's talked about, we got to go from WIF to an actual private key. So we're actually backtracking a bit. But we're going to do that using this function right here, where we're going to go to a private key with Bitcore using our variable private key that we input. We're then going to build up here this object, our unspent transaction output. We're going to see that we have to get this information here off of the block explorer. So this stuff we don't have actually. We have to look at it on the blockchain. So this is one way in which we're seeing how a transaction chain is embedded within this whole idea, this construct of Bitcoin. We're going to see what this is in a bit, and this isn't always 0. So we have to look at that, and we'll see where to find that. Here's the address that has funding. Here's our script, which we'll see later. We'll see where to get all this stuff, and then how many Satoshis we have. Now, actually, if you don't like Satoshis, you could use amount as the default. However, when we actually move it, we move everything in Satoshis. So I always try to use the same unit. This is by far the biggest problem in programming. Is if you use wrong units, you could make a very big mistake. Here we go. This is our unspent transaction output object with these various attributes. Here is the actual transaction, which we're going to use a transaction builder. We're going to use this unspent transaction output that we built up as our from. Our to is a new address that we have that's unfunded. We're going to say how much should we put in there. again, this has to be, this amount that we're transferring has to be smaller than this amount. I just did half because we're not going to do anything fancy. We're not going to subtract out miners' fees. Actually, that's, of course, in Bitcoin. So, and then we're going to add data. This is actually a little bit more, it's so simple, that's why we're just going to do it. It's just an op return right here. We're adding this data. This is a test also. And here, we can put your name, maybe. Have fun with it.
And this is the
But-
custom message which you talked about last time.
I'm sorry?
This is the custom message, right?
This is a custom message, so I could put ECU, Rock. See, we just put anything we want, and the transaction builder will hex this for us. We will then sign that with this variable that we just defined up here, private key, which was taking our with private key, reconverting it into a private key. And then we're going to output to the log the transaction, and then this verbiage here just to see what we then do with it next. So this is also on Slack. So has everybody been able to download this file? It's probably called 3-testnet. And then we can then modify this. We're going to just modify it one by one. So, okay. I'll wait till everyone's got this. How about I walk around and see how we're doing? All right, so I think we're good. So let's go build up our transaction. A lot of this is actually hard-coded, just because that's, I think, building it the first time, one time is good. Or building it 20 times is good too. So first things first, what we're going to do is I'm going to open up, oops, not this one, there's nothing there. I'm going to open up, wait, which one did I, there we go, all right. So first things first, I'm going to use this one right here. These are my private keys and addresses, and they all have 100,000 Satoshis in them. Let's double check it has 100,000 Satoshis in them. So I'm going to grab my address, copy that, go to chain.so. I'm going to put it right here. So before we do anything, double check that you're actually using something that has funding, that has 100,000 Satoshis. And so that would be 0.001. Oftentimes, if it's empty, then we'll have some problems. Now, be careful. To go from Satoshis to Bitcoin, it's 10 to the 8 difference. So you got to multiply that by 10 to the power 8. So, 8 is very hard in the beginning with all these zeros. So, all right, so we know that this has funding, that this actually is funding. I'm going to make it empty, and I'm going to dump it into another address. So we need to have that, but that'll be later. Also, the reason why I did this, we're going to need some information from this block explorer. We're going to need this transaction ID, and we're going to need to look at the raw data to get the script. We're also going to need to know the vout. So we're going to need actually this information. So if you haven't done this, go to chain.so with your address that you're going to move those funds across, because we're actually going to use all that information. So all right, so I'm going to go to my copy of 3testnet.transaction. We're going to hand code this. So first things first, we're going to come over here and we're going to go to get our private key in WIF format. We're going to copy that. So copy, and we're going to paste it in between the quotes. So paste, got that. So we pasted that there. The computer will then take that WIF and make it into a private key. That's fine. Then we're going to come down here, and here's where we have to use chain.so. We now have to go to chain.so and copy this transaction ID. It's always a chore. We're going to copy this transaction ID, and we're going to paste it right here. So if you will, this is telling, when we build up this transaction, when you're doing unspent transaction outputs, what you're really doing is you're moving control of who can have future control over that movement of funds, those unspent transactions. So we need to have that to reference where it came from. All right. We are then going to, let's click on this. Oh, here we go. We clicked on it. It tells us what block it's in. It's been confirmed. And blah, blah, blah. Oh, let's go to raw data. All right. We actually have to come in here. Now, in real life, you could, of course, have your program search through this through a block explorer, or if you're running the Bitcoin Qt client, you can just RPC it in. But we're going to do it by hand. Why not? So it's success. We're on the Bitcoin testnet. Here's our transaction ID, which we already copied over. We got that. We come over here, and we see that we have to find, and look at that. This is a good one. It's not the usual. So we're moving how many Satoshis? 100,000, or 0.001 Bitcoin. Here are our outputs. Here's output 0. Output 0 does not have what we think the value ought to be. This looks like it might have been maybe the change that went back. Here in output 1 is the Satoshis that we're trying to move. So that's one, usually 0, but every so often it will be non-zero. So we have to look at that. We also have our script text here, which we're going to use in a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back here. We're going to put here, my output for this one was 1, right? You have to search through the outputs to see which output we're moving. Most likely there's a 0, but in this case it's 1. That's wonderful. By the way, that took me forever and a day to figure out the first time. I thought they always started with 0, 0, 1, 2. No, it can sometimes be 1 or 2 or some other number. So if you're having frustration, it's probably that, quite frankly. All right, we come back. We got to put the address of where that Satoshis came from. So I'm just going to go back here. Here's that address. I'm going to copy, paste. So I pasted that in there. Here's our script. The script is right here, so I'm going to copy this, copy, and I'm going to just paste it in there. So we see that as we're building up this unspent transaction output object, a lot of this is coming from chain.so or block explorer.
I'm sorry, which script did you just copy and paste?
Oh, yes. So under, they're going to call it script text.
Okay, got it.
Did you get to this page again?
Oh, so this, to get to this page, so when we went to chain.so, we put in, if you will, our address where the funds that we're moving. We can click on this transaction ID, and this one just had one transaction ID, so that's great. We then come over to the raw data. And the raw data will tell us all of the attributes of that unspent transaction output. And then we have to go down and locate the outputs. Because this is what we're moving. We're moving, the output is the input, if you will, that we're then moving.
What is the difference between that raw data in the transaction and the raw data?
Oh, it's the same.
So you don't see the same raw data, it's different.
You have to search because it'll be hidden down. If you go into the transaction ID and then go into raw data, you go for that only transaction.
And only there you see this outputs array, because the other one you
No,
don't see the outputs
The other
array.
one, it used to be there, but I think that they modified.
Right
So if you
down.
hit raw data here, you know, here's the transaction ID, but yeah, you don't get more information. Yeah.
Is it the same or is it different?
You know, I would say it's not the same, because it used to be the same, but again, it's been changed. So go into that transaction. So we have that transaction chain, so we can see inside of the transaction what it looked like. They used to have more data within, so you didn't have to do this extra step, but
Jeff, I gave my address, like the one which we did, and I went to change. It already had this non-specific.
did you hit the transaction ID?
Uh,
So at the very bottom in blue,
Go back one more time, please, where you copy the address.
oh, yeah.
So,
So here's the address I'm moving, so I copy this.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh. And then you go to the transaction ID,
No.
And then we go into, if you will, the raw data of that transaction, so we can see it.
Sorry, I was looking at the loop address here.
Oh,
But this is a transaction.
we'll go into this raw data. And again, we're doing this so that we can find all this extra stuff so we can build up our transaction. It's actually a lot of fun to do this after a while. You get a lot of experience. It's very relaxing.
Could you clarify? So you used private key at the very beginning, and then you used the same address somewhere in the middle.
For that private key.
Okay, for that private key. And then you use script from raw data.
And then we're using the scripts that's in our block explorer.
Okay, so we need to change three things.
And the output.
Yeah, and what is the output?
And the output number is output index. So the output index here, this is sometimes called the V out, or the index of the outputs that we're spending.
Okay.
And it should add up to the number of satoshis that we've got. So in this case, 100,000. So when we look at this output, it's got 100,000 satoshis in it.
Got it. Thank you.
We could have multiples of this, and we could have different outputs and move one output one place, another output somewhere else. You might ask the question, why would we do any of this when you could just get a wallet, which we'll see tomorrow. Where's Chris? You'll see that wallets do all this behind the scenes. One reason why you might want to hand roll your own transaction is you might have an address in which somebody has dusted it with a small amount to track it, and you go, well, I don't want them to know where I put that money. You could roll your own transaction, picking up only the output you want, your money, not the dust, and move that somewhere, leaving it behind, so they have no idea.
Sorry, what do you mean by dusted?
So what you'll see, I like to put my funds scattered amongst many paper wallets, and I just monitor them. And every so often you'll see somebody's added to your wallet, your address, some money, and you go, whoa, that's great. And it amounts to no money, right? It's just a cent or a fraction of a cent. And some people do it for a number of different reasons. One was during the Olympics in Russia that they put advertisement, enjoy Sochi, right? And it was kind of an interesting idea, right? Now whenever I went to that Bitcoin address, for example, look at it, it said, enjoy Sochi, right? Viral marketing at its best, right? Sometimes though, it's just not that nice. And there they just put a small amount so that when you make a transaction, that transaction chain then continues with your next transaction, so that they know exactly where those funds are going to. So in effect, they dusted the money so that they can follow the dust, the trail.
How does this prevent?
You could just take your money, not the dust, and move that.
The dust in this situation, this example.
So in this case, yeah, the dust might be one of these outputs, and you just leave that behind or move that somewhere else, which most wallets will not do. You have to do that yourself. So.
Just occurs to me, has anybody come up?